an average of 66 days for you to change a habit. Now, this may not be a good habit or a bad habit. It may just be something that you habitually do that you want to change. And it's an average of 6 days, but it could be as little as 18 and as long as 254, depending on the complexity of the change. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, that it takes time to change. But change is kind of a check-in to see if we're alive, to see if we're alive and well, and if life is in the transformation mode, if we are living and alive, if things are happening. Change will be taking place if that's the case. And the way we embrace it, the way we accept it, or the way we deal with it is pretty important as to what the results are. So it kind of affects everything. So really what I'm doing today is I'm sharing what originally came from Jim Rohn. Some of you may know that name from, again, the last century. He was a great leader within the realm of motivation and that sort of thing. And he's actually the mentor to Tony Robbins. You know the name Tony Robbins, I'm quite sure. Everybody knows that name, as he is huge in that space today. But Tim Rohn was his mentor when he was a young man. And so what I want to share with you is what Tim Rohn said, because I think it's very powerful regarding change. And if we can embrace these couple of truths, it'll help us deal with change and hopefully be able to change those things in our lives that we really want to change. He approached the discussion from people's perspective for their desire for change around them. Things like in the political world or in economic realm or in religious freedom. And what he said about that is he made it a question. He made each of those a question. And he said, how much is your life going to change if you get the political leader you want tomorrow? If the politics in your realm change tomorrow, then how much is that going to change your life? And he and the audience would kind of answer it, not much. And then he would pose the same question for economics. What if your economy became that which you dreamed that it would be? What if everything was running on 8 cylinders and really running smoothly and it looked like the perfect economy? How would that really affect your life? Not much. You as an individual. And he would ask the same question in the religious realm. What if you could get your religious leaders to see things the way that you do, and that there was religious freedom in your country or within your sphere of influence? And how much would that change you? And the audience and he would say, not much. So that's why what we're looking at is our individual change. When you're thinking about the mega change, the world change, the answer is the same, not much. That's one of the reasons I ask people, don't follow the news too much. Because if you follow the news, you're going to be being absorbed in something you can't change, something that will have little effect on you, will have little impact upon your life. And so it's the same concept. But here's what Jim Rohn said about change. And you may want to write this down. And again, this is change for personal growth, change to become the person you want to be, change to get the goals that you want to have, change in order to get from point A to point B because you haven't gotten where you wanted to be just yet. Here's what he said, and you may just want to write it down. It's just a little comment. If you will change, everything will change for you. Let that sink in. If you will change, everything will change for you. So now we're looking at the circumstances around us, and we're seeing things as we see them. And Jim Rohn is saying, when you change, your thinking changes. Your worldview, your philosophical perspective changes. Because when you change, you begin to see things through a different lens. Everything around you changes. Now, obviously, they're not actually changing. The view that you have of them is changing because you have taken the responsibility to change the only thing you can change, and that's you. And so we see things differently when we've changed. Those areas, especially that are burdensome to us, those areas that are maybe negative areas of our lives, the areas that we know are dragging us down. So when we, especially when we change those areas, then everything changes. I heard a speaker this week sharing the story of he and his friend running a marathon race. And at the end of this marathon race, the sponsors would provide free bagels, and of course, free water. They had already grabbed their water, but there was a table set up for bagels. And so he said, he mentioned to his friend, he said, "Hey, there's free bagels over there. Let's go get a free bagel." And his friend said, "Look at that line. I don't want to get involved in that line." And he said, "Free bagels." And his friend pointed to the line again and said, "Long line." And he said, but it's a free bagel." And his friend said, "If you want to get in that line, you go ahead." And the speaker made the point that all his friend could see was the long line. All he could see was the free bagel. So a different perspective. We kind of see what we want to see or are conditioned to see. So when that's the case, we may need to change so that we can see the bigger picture. And we can only do that often if we change. Now, how does this change happen? This change that really matters, that takes place within our being to change us to start on the path to becoming the person that we really want to be, that we really believe we are created to be. You often will hear me say here on this channel that, whatever the big idea is, whatever it is that we're trying to do, that we're not trying to change the world regarding this big idea that we have. We're just trying to change our world. Now, the world may change as a result of this great idea that you have, but you're going to start with your world, my world. If the world changes, great. But we're not moving at it in that direction. We're not going about it saying, "I'm going to change the world. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to change my world." And that's what I've got to focus on, because that's all I have to work with. That's all that I can change. So we do this by changing ourselves. This is because it's just all that we have the power to do. We're told that we have these neurological pathways in our brains, described to me for simplicity like ruts in a road. I was able to grasp that. And so we automatically think the same way, and our thoughts go in those same ruts. You can picture that, right? You're on a muddy road, and there are ruts, or you're in the snow, and there are ruts that you're driving in. It's just easier to stay in those ruts. It's hard to get out of those ruts. And so that's kind of the picture that they paint for us that's going on in our brain, that we've created these neurological ruts by virtue of our thought patterns and by virtue of the way that we've always been and always have seen things when we're not changing. So that's why it takes an average of 66 days to make a change. You got to get out of that rut, and that neurological rut. So we naturally follow the way of the least resistance. That's kind of a human thing. We don't want to fight things. We want to take the easy way. And so we do that same thing in our thinking and in our mind. But now let's go back to Jim Rohn, because he didn't just leave it at that. And he said, now here's how you change. Yeah, when you change, everything will change for you. Yes. But how do you change? And so he made it very, very simple. He said, you find one thing that you can do well and that's easy for you to do. And you focus on changing that area of your life. So you assess yourself. You say, now that's where I want to go. And I'm lacking this, or I need this, or I need to change this kind of characteristic in my life if I'm going to get there. You start with that small thing. And he says, if you start with that small thing, then it becomes a much easier task because now you've got something that you can be accountable to yourself for. Because once you've said, this is what I'm going to change, then you can stick with it and you can believe that you're going to do it because it's not a huge, huge thing. And he said, so you choose that one thing, you find that one thing that's easy for you to do, and you do it and you work hard at it. It's easy, but you do have to work hard at it. So you don't take it lightly, you take it very seriously. You take it very seriously, see it as a major issue in your life, and you commit to it, and you consistently work it day in and day out. So you do work it hard. And he reminded us that if you recognize that it's an easy thing to do, it's also an easy thing not to do. And remember, you're changing a habit. You're changing a way of thinking that you've had previously. You're changing a characteristic that you've had before. So again, if it takes 66 days for you to change that new behavioral habit, and it could take as long as 254 days, depending on how complex it is, then you really want to work at that. But what that easy thing is that you choose to do, you must take seriously. And the end result will tell you if you really want that change or not. That is to say that if you bail out, maybe you didn't really want that change. Now, it could just be a habit that you want to break, or a trip that you want to take, that you want to schedule, and you want to somehow figure out how you can take that trip. But here again, I'm really addressing the lifelong changes, the changes that will make a huge difference in your life, that will take you from the person that you are today to the person that you want to be tomorrow. Now, it's true that for some, that may mean changing a bad habit or even an addiction as the first thing, as the first thing you have to work on. No question about it. If some people are in that situation, then that's where you got to begin. But recognize it. Recognize that that's where you're going to begin. And don't say you're going to be all dressed up and in the suit that you want to be in a year from now or 10 years from now, tomorrow. No, you got to start with this major thing that's going on. So if that be it, then make that the easy thing and get it done. Find the thing that you need to do there that is easy and just work on it until you can take it to the next level. Ask yourself, what is it you really need to change to see your world differently, to change your world? So once you've done that, once you've determined what you really want to change, you pick that easy thing for you to do. And then you commit to it daily. You know, if you're sometimes we have folks on here from India, and if you're in the caste system over there, it's not supposed to be legal anymore, but apparently it's still there, then you're not going to make that first goal marrying into another caste. That's not going to be your first goal. Now, that might be your long-term goal, but you're going to figure out what do you need to do to better represent yourself in order to be able to get to that place where you can do that. So it's figuring out what the next thing is and choosing something that you know you can do on a day in and day out basis and simply committing to it and doing it. Here in the States, we have an expression that we ask the question, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. Now, that's not because we eat elephants, of course. It's an expression to cause us to see that when we have a big goal, we have a big project, We have something before us that looks so huge that we've got to take it in doable pieces. We've got to take just small pieces in order to get it done. And so that's why we use that expression. And so that's what really Jim Rohn pointed out as he taught back in the 70s and 80s. When you pick that easy thing to do, read a chapter of a book every day, run a mile, learn something new every day in your industry or in a whole new realm, whatever it is, work at it hard. Whatever you do, you got to work at it hard. You can't say because it's easy, you don't have to do anything. No, it's easy to do, but you got to do it. You still got to do the hard work to do it. You still have to work your butt off doing the easy thing. And again, he reminds you again, if it's easy to do, it's also easy not to do. So you just want to keep that in mind. Now, I mentioned Tony Evans. He took that one step further, and he gives 3 ways to focus on that thing. He says every morning, you want to think about what are you to focus on today? And then he says, what do you care about? And what do these matters that you care about mean to you? What do you really care about? And what do these matters really mean to you? And then finally, what can you do today to create the results that you desire? So he simply took Jim Rohn's concept and broke it down even further for us so we can say, now this is how we do the easy thing. We focus on it. We think about it in light of what is it that I really care about? And why do I care about these things? Why do they matter to me? Answering those deeper questions, like we often talk about here on this channel. And then looking at the specific thing that can be done. And so that's with regard to the bigger issues that you're going after, but it's taking each one each day so that you've got a specific goal. So it's all in determining what's really important to you to change. Committing to a small change, sticking with it. Yes, simple, but follow through is everything. It's not just going to happen. You do have to work at it. Now, if you've been here before, you know I always like to look at what the Word of God says about all of this, because if someone has a good idea and it works, well, I happen to believe that that was given by God, because all good things come from above. So if you believe that all good things come from above, you have to believe that all good ideas come from God. They might have gotten into Jim Rohn's mind or Tony Robbins' head, and he spread it out, but it had to come from somewhere. So I look at a couple of scriptures. First, we find that God never changes. So we look at God and we see him as entirely other, different than us. He never changes. And there's lots of scriptures regarding that, but Malachi 3:6 is the simplest one. He says, I, the Lord, do not change. He makes it very clear. But then Jesus said in Matthew, he said, unless you change and become like little children, you'll never enter the kingdom of heaven. So unless you change. So change is pretty important. And he was speaking of humbling ourselves before God as small, helpless children, setting aside our arrogant ways, setting aside that we are God, so to speak, and that we don't need God, but coming to him humbly. And then that's how we are seeing ourselves as little children. And then, of course, in 1 Corinthians, regarding the big change, we will all be changed in a flash. Some translations say in the wink of an eye. That's the big change. But I really love the one that Jesus speaks about when he talks to Nicodemus and he says, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of heaven. Think about that. Think of how powerful that description is. Think about how, and Nicodemus said, you mean I got to go back into my mother's womb and be born again? How do I do that? Jesus looked at him and said, you're a teacher in the synagogue and you don't get this? What's wrong with you? He didn't quite say it that way. But think of that description, that picture. That baby is getting fed by the umbilical cord. Doesn't have to do anything. He's in this nice, warm, dark, warm place. Everything's wonderful. And all of a sudden, that cord is cut. He's out in all the bright lights. Everything has changed. He wakes up and nothing is like it was 2 minutes ago, a minute ago. Everything has changed. So it's a beautiful picture there about how things happen when he comes into our life and opens our eyes and we have new life. So I mentioned those illustrations in case you're looking for that revolutionary spiritual change, certainly. But if not, no problem. Embrace the same concept for the change you are looking to make to become the person you believe you've been made to be. See it as a revolutionary change, that everything changes, that you're in a whole new world now. And seeing that, then go after it with vigor. So you can certainly take those scriptures as literal as they are regarding the need for spiritual growth. But if that's not where you are right now, that's no problem. Embrace those ideas regarding the changes that you want to make in your life today. See it as a whole new world. See it as something that you've got to change your thinking about regarding everything in order to get where you want to go, get from A to B, in order to achieve the goals that you want to achieve, to become the person that you believe you've been made to be. And so